Okay, we'll get going, guys. So, welcome to this session. We have had a look at budgeting so far. Now we're going to start thinking about a couple of other elements of finance that are going to be important when it comes to sports management. We're going to start off by looking at costing, pricing, and decision making before we start to think about financial statements and documentation, and get used to start thinking about your second assignment. I know you've just done your first one, but get you looking ahead to that. So, three outcomes today. We're going to be thinking about how organizations, the peculiarity of sport essentially, and what makes sport different from running other types of businesses, particularly in relation to both cost and price. We are going to think about how we monitor performance of organizations financially, and we're going to think about things like cost centers and a concept called break-even analysis. And then I'm going to give you some more activities to work through in terms of break-even analysis. Depending on time, I'm not going to lie. So I'm not sure why I decided to share with you this whilst we've got record on. But last week, whilst I was away, I was very unwell, and I still don't feel 100%. So we probably won't go till 6 o'clock. We'll see how I feel. I spent a lot of time on the toilet. Anyway, we will move on. Fine now, by the way, just to let you know. So peculiarities of sport. Couple of things we're going to think about. We're going to think about how sports organizations think about success in comparison to what we might call conventional businesses. We're going to think about this concept of a level playing field and what it actually is a level playing field. Variable quality, collaborations and cartels, emotions and passions, product and brand loyalty, and fixed supply schedule. So thinking of the first of these, premierships over profits. And what we mean by this is actually, if you were thinking about a standard business, I always like to go to my supermarket analogy. So if you were Tesco's or the Co-op or Sainsbury's, the way that you might think about success would be about how much profit you generate. Okay? When we're thinking about sports organizations, they're going to measure success very differently, right? So it's not necessarily about profit, but it's about success on the pitch. Okay, now that has slightly shifted over time in the way that sports organizations are run, but by and large, that is traditionally how sports organizations have been monitoring their success. So business firms will have multiple objectives, but their underlying purpose is to provide dividends to their shareholders and make a profit, right? So we can think about BMW and Mercedes as being fierce competitors, and by generating profits, they can both claim to have a successful year. However, large profits will do little to convince sports clubs of their success if they finish the season at the bottom of the ladder. And this is some of the criticisms that are leveled at football clubs that perhaps are very good financially and manage to produce profits, but perhaps aren't competitive with other clubs in their leagues. Okay. We can also think about how sports organizations are different in terms of the concept of there being a level playing field. Okay. So sports organizations often prepared to do all it takes to achieve on-field success. Domination of a league or competition could be self-defeating. So if you were almost too successful, you might actually end up at a disadvantage. Okay. The ongoing viability of a competition will be around how much opportunity there are for other teams to compete and win. So no surprise that two of the most successful professional sports leagues in the world are the NFL, which has got a salary cap and a draft system, and the Australian Football League, which have also got a salary cap and draft systems. So what do we mean by that? What do we mean by a draft system when we're talking about the NFL? How does that play out in terms of creating competitive balance? Yeah, exactly that. So club that finishes bottom of the league will have the first pick of players that are coming up through the draft system. So a very different system to what we have in Europe, but created in a way whereby the team that was weakest has the pick of the best player for the following year. Now, of course, there's all sorts of peculiarities around trading drafts and your picks, etc. But fundamentally, that's about creating a more competitive, balanced league and trying to avoid a situation essentially where we have just a handful of clubs in the UK that could realistically win the English Premier League, for example. So we can also draw upon this paradox, which is the Lewis Schmeling paradox. Okay, so this was a rivalry between Lewis and Schmeling, and it gave rise to this idea of the paradox, which is a concept in sports economics. Okay, it was discovered by Walter Neal in his article, "The Peculiarity Economics of Professional Sports," and it's essentially around that you can actually put yourself at a disadvantage by being too successful. So whereas non-sporting firms would be better with less competition. So if you were thinking about Sainsbury's, they would actually like it if Tesco's disappeared and Asda disappeared and the Co-op disappeared. Actually, in sports, you need competition for those organizations to be successful. Okay, so the paradox came because there was this boxer who he won like 50 fights in a row. He was super successful, right? But it got to a point where fans stopped turning up to his fights because they almost knew the outcome was a foregone conclusion. So you needed this element of uncertainty to create this interest and this intrigue. Okay, so you can think about it as a way of you almost are reliant upon your competitors within a sporting situation. Okay. And somewhat related to this, we've got the idea of variable quality. Okay, so if you were to buy a Dyson Hoover, you know what I mean by Dyson Hoover? No, just okay. If you were to buy a Hoover or a vacuum cleaner, then you would expect that vacuum cleaner to work, right? Okay, and you would expect it to work pretty equally every time you used it, right? But that's not the same with sport, obviously. So we have a situation whereby fans are actually attracted to the idea if they don't know what's going to happen, right? So one of the issues we have as sports managers is we only have a limited control over what actually happens on the pitch, right? We can create the situation and the setting and the environment and the culture for that organization to thrive on a pitch. But actually, we can't do much to control what happens when the whistle is blown. So what is interesting about sport is that if we did know what was going to happen, we probably wouldn't watch it, right? We kind of are interested in what might happen over the course of that match or that game, depending on what the sport is. Okay? So it's actually really important that we have this level of intrigue and uncertainty. And actually, if every game we knew who was going to win, it would probably become quite boring quite quickly. Another kind of difference between sports organizations and other types of organizations is this idea called a fixed supply of schedules, right? So we know at the start of the season, your club or organization are going to have a certain amount of fixtures which they're going to compete in. So they might compete in a league, they might compete in a cup competition, okay? But it's fairly fixed in terms of what's going to happen, right? So if it is the English Premier League we're talking about, you've got 38 games, you've got 19 of them at home. So that's 19 opportunities to generate money from people coming to your stadium, paying for a ticket, perhaps buying some food and drink, excuse me. And that's kind of it. You have to hope you do well in the cups and you might get a few more games or the Champions League, whatever additional competitions you're playing in. Same for cricket, same for rugby, most team sports in that sense. However, that's not the same for Tesco's or Sainsbury's or the Co-op, right? Because they are going to be open pretty much every single day of the year. People can come and buy whenever they want, and they're going to generate income year round, unlike sports clubs that perhaps are only going to open their doors 19 days a year. One thing that's interesting is that clubs are now trying to think about how their stadiums might generate revenue the rest of the year, okay? So they're thinking about other income generation opportunities, and there are particular clubs that are very good at this. Tottenham, for example, that have all sorts of different activities. They may host other events, they may host concerts, but fundamentally, there's a kind of a fixed supply of opportunities for sports organizations to generate money. We've also got this idea of collaborations and cartels. So this is, again, a very key difference between European sport and North American sport. So in America, the system is very different, where you have a franchise system. And clubs, there's no promotional relegation, particularly in the likes of the NFL or basketball or baseball. And that allows clubs to control the situation and the environment in which they can generate income from. If they know they're not going to get relegated, they don't have to spend extra money on players that are going to allow them to get out of that situation. So there's opportunities to create an environment whereby clubs can continue to generate profit and they know they don't need to spend a certain amount. Things like salary caps help here as well because clubs know what they are going to spend and they can't spend over that. And by creating this kind of collaboration, this agreement with all the other clubs in the organization, you kind of create this circumstance and this situation to suit you. Okay. So the clubs are mutually independent and rely very much upon one another. You've also got emotions and passions. So you'll often hear stories about people that want to get there when they die. They're so committed to their clubs, they love them so much that they perhaps want to get their ashes scattered on the basketball court or the rugby pitch or somewhere else. If they really, really love their club, right? They love them so much that they want to do that. My uncle wanted to do that, but you don't get that with Tesco's, right? You don't find somebody that loves Tesco's so much they're just dying to have their ashes scattered over Tesco's, mainly because it'd be sort of unhygienic and not very healthy. But that is the emotion that we have to our clubs and teams that we value so much, right? So that emotion and passion is very, very different from the, I go to Sainsbury's because it's on the way home, but equally I'd be very happy to go to Tesco's. But I'm not going to start supporting another football team. Do you know what I mean? So there's this kind of attachment that we have that makes sports organizations very different from kind of corporate other types of organizations. And actually, what's really this last sentence here is really important because kind of changes to that tradition and that culture and that heritage of a lot of these sports organizations is seen as very controversial. Okay. And somewhat similarly, we've got the idea of product and brand loyalty. Okay, so the idea of you shifting allegiance is probably very, very true. You're more likely to get divorced than you are to change your football club or your rugby club or whoever it is. Okay, so you're more likely to change your life partner than you are your sports organization. Okay. And I've not just chosen this because West Ham are massive and just, a massive football club that managed to get Erik ten Hag the sack. But there's a piece of research that essentially says you follow your football club at whatever level they're playing at. It was a research that was done about West Ham, and it was following supporters that found out that it actually didn't really matter even what league they were necessarily in. Fans would still go out and watch them and have this kind of unconditional attachment to their club, and it didn't really matter what level they were playing at, which is going to be very different to when we choose to buy a Hoover or a vacuum. We would perhaps look at the reviews to see how they were doing and the quality of the product before we purchased it. It's not the same when it comes to sport. So I suppose what we can take away from this is actually sports organizations are very, very different in their nature to traditional businesses, okay? But actually there is still a lot in common as well. So we still need to apply basic business principles to how we operate these organizations. And perhaps one of the failures of this is people haven't traditionally seen running a sports organization as running a business, because although there are similarities, there are also a number of differences as well. So it's trying to strike that balance. So these have been kind of condensed and compared to one another in this list that I'm about to show you. So Foster, Gracer, and Welsh, you might remember from earlier on in the module when we were looking at types of income for organizations, compiled a list of the similarities and differences, and you can see that here. So areas of commonality on the left between sports organizations and traditional businesses, and areas of differences on the right. So if we take the areas of commonality, leadership being important, of course, within both sports organizations and traditional businesses, the idea of creating value and value sharing, searching for revenue growth, quality of product does matter, branding matters, fans and customers as a business pillar, and globalization. Whereas areas of difference, winning on the field is more important than generating a profit, perhaps. You've got diverse owner objectives, and we'll come on to that when we look at governance and ownership later on, but a multitude of reasons as to why somebody might want to own a sports organization rather than perhaps just purely to generate a profit. We've got supporting the weakness as being quite a kind of a peculiarity, so an area of difference. So you wouldn't perhaps find profit and sharing and revenue sharing in the supermarket industry, but you do within American sports, for example. Handicapping the strongest as well, so the idea of salary caps and making them pick last, again, something we would find in sport, particularly in America. Okay. So with that kind of setting context in mind, we'll now move on to the costing, pricing, and decision-making. And if you'll notice I'm going quite quickly through this, it's because there's lots of exercises that I'd like us to start thinking about. So costing, what we're thinking about here is how do we actually cost what it is that the organization needs, okay? So a number of different things we need to consider when we're running a sports organization, and a number of different ways in which we can categorize them. So something that's going to be really important to think about here is an idea of fixed costs and variable costs. So we've got fixed costs, which are going to be costs that are going to stay the same or however many times we use them, right? So it could be a vehicle hire, it could be guest speakers if we were doing an event. It could be insurance, right? We know that we've got to pay that cost regardless, okay? But on the other hand, we've got variable costs. Now, these are costs that are going to change depending on the amount of times that we, perhaps the number of participants that we have. So if we were running a event and we had freebies for each attendee, we would have to pay for the freebies for them to get the freebies. But for every attendee that we have come, there's going to be a variable cost, okay? So it's not a fixed cost because it's not set in stone, but it will change, okay? So questions that we would need to know when we're trying to kind of manage the performance and the categorization of costs here are really what is it that we want to know and what is it we're trying to do. And with the other kind of costs that we need to think about here are direct costs. We're going to go through each of these one by one. Direct costs, indirect costs, semi-variable costs, and sunk costs as well. So we know our fixed costs, expenses that remain constant regardless of production or activity levels. So an example would be rent for a sports facility. Anybody like to tell us what fine establishment that is on screen? Very familiar with that lately. Yes, that is the Concrete Bowl. That is the pride of East London, absolutely. There's the little orbital tower in the background there as well. Variable costs. So we know variable costs, they're going to fluctuate depending on the level of production or activity levels. An example would be a cost of concessions, which would increase with the number of attendees and events. So if we have more attendees coming, we might need to buy more hot dogs, essentially. Yeah. We've got direct costs. So these are expenses directly tied to a specific activity or a project. So it could be that we are Sterling on the ball. We're starting our new women's team, and we know that we're going to have to buy shirts and kit, especially for that team. So that is a direct cost to us as an organization. Okay. Indirect costs, these are expenses that perhaps wouldn't be directly attributed to one particular team or part of the organization, but for the whole organization. So if you think about the university, the lights that we use are not a direct cost, but they're an indirect cost because the university would have to use them otherwise, but we need them for this particular activity. So for instance, administrative salaries or facility maintenance costs would be an indirect cost. Okay, you can't attribute it to one particular activity, but we need it. It's a shared cost. Okay. We've got semi-variable costs, so they have aspects or characteristics of both fixed costs and variable costs. So if you were to try and put this as an example, it would be player contracts where they've got a weekly salary, a fixed weekly salary. We're going to pay them £100 a week, but we've got a goal bonus or something like that. So there's a fixed part to that, but if they score 2 goals, we've got to pay them an extra £50, okay? And then we've also got sunk costs. So these are costs that have already been paid for and they can't be recovered. Okay, so you could think about the cost of building a training facility, and once that's been built, it's written off. Okay, we're not going to be able to get that money back, and there's nothing sort of future decisions that we could think about there. So bearing that in mind, we're going to be thinking a little bit about how do we monitor performance. So we know we've got different types of costs within an organization, but actually how do we stay on top of that and make sure that costs don't kind of spiral out of control. And what we're going to think about here is this concept of cost centers. Okay, so this is how we try and break down costs within an organization and perhaps attribute costs to parts of an organization to see how they're performing financially. So typically, sports organizations will use two types of budget centers. So we've got a cost center and we've got a profit center. Okay, so a cost center are going to be a designated location or an activity for which costs are collected. And we've got a profit center. So this is going to be something that is going to be accountable for both costs and revenues. So something that's going to cost us money, but it's also going to bring in income to the organization. So again, if we take the university as an example, we could think of a cost center as being HR. Okay, so human resource department that look after staff's contracts and salaries and well-being and satisfaction, etc. Okay, now that doesn't generate any revenue, but it's an important part of the business. You need to have staff, obviously, but it's a cost center. It's going to cost us money to operate that. Okay. The profit center might be operating a course that students come and pay to attend and generates revenue for the organization. So the Faculty of Health, Sports and Science, which obviously we're a part of, would be a profit center. Okay, so it's generating revenue by putting on courses that students can attend. There's also costs attributed to that as well, but largely it makes more money than it costs. Okay. So trying to work out how these different centers operate will help you understand which parts of your organization are functioning well and perhaps which parts are underperforming. So we've got four. I'm going to perhaps just troubleshoot this out loud. 4 different types of organizations here. Think about what would be an appropriate way to break down the different areas of these 4 examples. So let's take first a local authority swimming pool. So that could be, or why don't we just say the university swimming pool? So the swimming pool on campus, right? We want to find out how that is operating financially. Is it a success? Is it not successful? How might we break the costs down to try and understand whether that is successful or not? What do you think? Open question. Okay, a sort of internal metric, such as? Yeah, okay. So staffing, perhaps. Could you think perhaps a wee bit broader about the cost centers within? It's good to have that metric, but perhaps a bit broader than. Okay, so similar thing there, but yeah, number of people using the pool, good. But again, what are the parts of the swimming pool that might generate profit or might cost money? So we think about the university, we can think about the HR department, perhaps be a cost center. The Faculty of Health, Sciences and Sport would be a profit center. When it comes to the swimming pool, what do you think how could we break that down? Okay, yep. Yep. What else? Okay, yeah. Okay. Let's think about another one. Let's think about a professional sports team. Okay, so let's take. Sorry. Okay, so that's not necessarily a financial cost, is it? So we need to think about the financial parts of the organization rather than the success of the organization. Okay. Okay, so if we had a professional sports team, yes, we might think of the match day operations or the playing squad. Yeah. Sorry.
And what they'll be wearing on a match day, like what you get from the university, who buy match apparel for them.
Like, sorry, say it again.
So the jerseys and the.
Oh, jerseys, apparel. Okay. Potentially, I think that would be part of a bigger cost center. So you would have perhaps the match day and the playing aspect of it. Yeah, might be one cost center within a professional football club or a professional cricket club or rugby club. What are the other parts of that business? That's obviously the biggest bit. That's what the bit most people are interested in. How else might you split up different parts of that organization? What are the other parts of an organization that might have costs or profit attached to them? Ticket sales. Okay, so that might come under the match day. But yeah, good. So that's probably likely to be a profit center, right? Okay. Okay, venue maintenance. Yeah, that could be part of that cost center. Yeah, most likely to be part of that cost center. What about the other days of the week? What do they do the other days of the week? Admin. Yes, we're going to need admin within our organization. That's likely to be a cost or profit. Yep, good. So we're going to need admin staff. That's probably going to cost us money. Yep. Marketing. Yeah. Yeah. Cost or profit, do we think? Yeah, could be. Although it might generate a lot of sponsorship revenue. Yep. Okay. What else? Sorry? Logistics costs. Okay. Yeah. That could be part of the match day center, perhaps. Yeah. What do they do when they're not playing? Memberships, maybe. Yeah, they might have membership.
Maintenance.
Yeah. Training. Okay, so they've got a training center, right? What's that likely to be? A cost or a profit center? Cost. Yeah, it's not likely to generate a profit for us. It's something that's a necessity for the organization, but it's not going to bring in revenue for us. Okay. Anything else? Sponsors? Travel expenses, yeah, with logistics maybe. So that would be perhaps attached to the first day, the first team costs. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. So that could be be a cost center. Yeah. If there was like a physio aspect to it. Yeah. Yeah. So the marketing. Yeah. Okay. Marketing. Okay. So if we think about that local pool, we might have the swimming part, and we might have the vending part as well. So we could have in the swimming part, we could split that into a cost center for public swimmers, and also for swimming lessons. So thinking about how do we derive the income from the organization. Think about our professional sports team. We could have a number of different tiers to the cost center structure. So we could have the match day. We could have a club shop. Maybe the club shop brings in profit for the organization. Conferencing facilities, perhaps, might have hotel attached to it, financial and catering as well. Okay, if it was a local sports club, you might split the center by the different sections. So they might have a swimming part, they might have diving, polo, etc. And they might try and work out which of these activities was profitable and which one was not profitable. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of an activity now. So if you head to Canvas, the first activity on there is to do with cost centers and get you to work out which parts of the business are going to be profitable for a sports organization. So in this example, they've chosen to split the sports center into a few different centers. They've got the leisure pool, the sports hall, the changing sauna and jacuzzis, the squash courts. Okay. So is everyone kind of comfortable with what we're doing here? Yeah? Yeah? So hopefully when we get to the end of that, we'll be able to work out which of the centers performed better than their income. Is everyone kind of clear with what we're doing here? Yeah? Yep. Any questions? No? Okay, so hopefully, whoops, once you got to the end of that process, we also know our capital costs, I believe. What do we mean by capital costs? Yeah, the cost of building it. Yeah. Okay, so we can see which of the departments provide the most revenue for the organization. So it's a way of working out which of the bits function best. And we can see that actually the sports hall is the most profitable for the organization based on this. Okay. So it's a bit of a tricky art to try and work out how to proportion costs to different parts of a project. So that's when we come back to our idea of variable costs and direct costs and indirect costs. Okay, so that's where those concepts can be applied in practice. Everyone kind of happy with that as an idea? Yep. You'll be glad to know you're not getting assessed on any more spreadsheets. So. Okay, right. Something a bit more fun. We will get you to do a Mentimeter. Test your understanding of costs. Okay. Question 1. Which cost is something that can be entirely attributed to the making of a product or delivering a service or activity? Huh. A direct cost. Well done. Question 2. Something that cannot be directly attributed, making a product or delivering a service. It's an indirect cost, goods. Okay, question 3. A cost that changes with the level of demand or usage. Goods, variable costs. Question 4. A set cost irrespective of the level of usage or the level of demand. Yep, good. Fixed costs, and then Oh dear. Who's peelings? No. How you feeling? Good. Yeah. No pressure. A cost that has already been incurred and cannot be recovered or changed. Congratulations, sir. It was very appealing. Here all day. Here all day. Okay. Right. We're going to get you doing some break-even analysis now. So, break-even analysis, you might have come across this before. Quite a simple concept, really. What we're thinking about here is how our costs of an organization meet with our revenues, and at what point our activity becomes a neutral, basically. So it's not costing us anything, or it's not making money for us. Okay. So break-even is when we have our costs met by our revenue, essentially. Okay, so quite a valuable tool because it allows us to try and plan for the future and make sure that we don't incur any losses. Of course, if we can generate a profit, that's obviously advantageous, but it's really about ensuring that we're not in a negative or generating a deficit. Okay, so we can think about numerous different types of opportunities here. If you have a look at this diagram, obviously we're taking into account our costs here, and that includes total costs, variable costs, fixed costs, but we're also working with our profit to try and find out at what point our activity is going to break even. Okay. So first thing we would need to do with a break-even analysis is trying to split our costs into fixed and variable costs. So now you'll be familiar with what those concepts mean. So for an example, if we were running an event of some sort, the fixed costs are going to be the things that are going to stay the same throughout that event. So we are going to think here about we need to rent the venue, right? So the cost isn't going to change depending on the number of people that turn up. It's going to be a fixed cost to hire a hall for a day, for example. Okay, guest speakers, they're going to charge a set amount. That's not going to vary depending on how many people turn up, for example. Light and power, insurance, okay, these are all going to be fixed costs. On the other hand, we're going to have some variable costs, so some costs that change. So that will be dependent upon the number of sales, attendance levels. So this is going to include the number of casual staff. So if we are going to have thousands of people, we're going to need lots and lots of staff. If we're going to have tens of people, perhaps don't need that many staff. Okay. Equipment, consumables, so lunch provision, etc. How much lunch do we need to put on for people? Giveaways and catering. Our second step would be to estimate anticipated revenues for every level of sale. And then we would try and compare and contrast our total income, so our total revenue and total cost for every sale, membership and attendance level. So our formula would be our fixed costs, whatever our total fixed cost is, divided by the price minus the variable costs. Okay. So if you head over to Canvas again, we'll get you working on another example, and we need to try and work out what we would need to charge to break even in this example. So I've said read this PDF, but actually you can just write it down. So if we go back to, don't forget our equation here that we're going to need. So we've got our total fixed costs. Okay, so what would our numbers be here, do we think? 20? How many people do we think we would need to turn up? 20. So have a look at the equation again. So what are our total fixed costs here? 1,000. Yeah, £1,000 in fixed costs. Okay. Then what's our price that we're charging? 20. Yeah, so we're charging £20 a ticket. We need to take off our variable cost per person, which leaves us with, so £1,000 divided by 5, 200 people. Yeah. 200 people. Okay, so 1,000 divided by 5, 200. Okay. So we'll give that another go. So we've got 6 different challenges here to work through. Oh my God. I don't know what I did there. Okay, but what are fixed costs in the first one? Okay, and we're going to divide it by what? 18. So our answer should be, oops, yep, 560 people needed. Yep. Okay. Oh. Just ignore case B. Okay. Everyone happy with this as concepts? Yeah? Yeah? Any questions about any of that so far? What I'm going to do is we won't go through all of this just now, but you'll get the idea, the concept of what we're trying to do with break-even analysis. And if you want to work through these later on, then you can do. Conscious to crack on. Okay, so we've had a look at costs now. Okay, now we're going to think about pricing and some of the things we need to think about when we're pricing within sport. So first thing to say is that there's no right price when it comes to pricing sport. It's something that's highly contended, and you'll often hear about prices of things and sports events. Not obviously just sport, music and everything as well. Tried to get Oasis tickets, and they were just. Did you? Did you actually? My new best friend. No. Did you? I couldn't even get in the waiting line. Did he? Good for him. I would. I don't think I will. anyway, right, moving on. I'll tell you what, I'll give you an A if you want to bring me along. Okay, yeah, that'd be grand. Okay, right, so I'm going to Oasis now. That's 16. Right, no right price for sport. Lots of different questions, ethical issues here as well, particularly around backgrounds of some sports and people being able to afford the opportunities to see sports in the flesh, and whether it just becomes an ethical question of how much you can generate, or are there questions around enabling people the opportunity to see sports events in the flesh. Okay, so we've got the idea around not just linked to demand, but we've also got linked to costs. So actually, you think about sports events; they're very expensive to put on. You got to think about the facilities. You've got to obviously think about the athletes themselves, the management, the maintenance. All the costs need to be taken into account when you're thinking about how you're going to price the tickets or the product. Okay. So it can be really difficult to try and work this out to balance both the costs and make profits, but also trying to not set at a price which precludes people from being able to attend. Two examples here. So this was the left is the England cricket team. Fans were paying up to £190 for tickets to watch England play Australia in the Ashes, and West Ham on the right. Okay, so we've got different types of pricing that we're going to have to think about when we're a sports manager. So different strategies that we can engage here when we're thinking about how do we come up with the right amount of money to charge our product up. So our first one to think about is cost plus pricing, okay? So this involves working out the costs of our product and then adding a markup to the cost of it to determine its selling price. So you think that's probably the most straightforward way of doing it, right? Working out how much it costs to make or produce, and then adding on a markup. Okay, so you think an organization might add a 20% markup to the cost of manufacturing sports equipment to cover expenses and generate profit. We've got equity pricing. Okay, so this is a strategy which considers perhaps fairness and equity. Some people still value that. And you've got prices set to ensure that all consumers, guys, can we listen up? We'll have a break in a wee bit and then we'll have a chance to chat. So setting prices to ensure that all consumers have equal access to the product or service. So different programs like Kids for Quid or, family pricing and season tickets, for example. So for an example, an organization might offer discounted ticket prices to ensure that attending a game is affordable for all. You've got demand-based pricing. So this is perhaps what's been in the headlines quite a lot lately. So this is based on the price changing depending upon the level of demand for it. So the prices are set according to the level of demand, supply and demand you might think of. Sports organization might increase ticket prices for popular matches or events where demand is going to be highest. So you can see here an example on the right, the Super Bowl trends in the prices obviously depends on the capacity of the stadium, obviously, but also perhaps the teams that are involved. Kind of similar to that is elasticity pricing. Easy for me to say. So you might think about the games that are going to be most desirable to watch, and they might be charged at a slightly higher price than some of the others. Okay, so elastic is the term we use here because you can think of it stretching. Okay, so when demand is going to be highest, it's going to be stretched further and the price is going to go up. Okay. Got prestige pricing. So this strategy is about setting higher prices to convey a sense of luxury or exclusivity. So you might offer a kind of a VIP package with premium amenities at a higher price point, and that's going to be perhaps a VIP or a platinum package or something like that. You've got quality assurance pricing. So this is all about kind of it being a genuine, authentic experience in some way, which kind of reflects the product as well. So you might have its official merchandise higher than the generic alternatives. Where you get the official licensed merchandise from as opposed to perhaps some of the knockoffs. Discrimination pricing. So different prices are charged to different customer segments based on factors such as income level, age, or membership status. So you might have discounted ticket prices for students or seniors. Okay, so you can see here on the right an example of Swansea City and their pricing category. Competition pricing, so thinking about your competitors' pricing strategy and then working out yours accordingly. Okay, so you might adjust ticket prices to match or undercut a competitor potentially to attract more customers. Penetration pricing, so initially setting prices low to gain market share. So you might think of something like women's football at the moment have very, very low ticket prices, and that's because they're trying to generate an audience and a market for the sport. Okay, so that's set in a way to try and encourage more people to come along with the idea that once they become a loyal fan, they'll be willing to perhaps pay some of the higher prices later on. Price skimming, so you might charge high prices for a newly renovated stadium and gradually reduce prices as it wears off. So you see this with Teslas. Teslas were like really, really expensive, and now you see them everywhere because they set that price at the start. So there's this kind of idea of exclusivity and demand, and then they reduce the price and make it kind of go into the kind of broader market. Okay, that was a whistle-stop tour of pricing. Let's see how much you can remember. Okay, Which pricing strategy involves setting prices based on the cost of production plus a premeditated markup? Yep. So we've got our cost plus pricing, working out our costs, then adding upwards. Guys, I really want to see some originality in the names here. Come on, you can be creative. Feel free to be creative. You get bonus points if you reference West Ham in some way. What pricing option adjusts prices according to the level of demand for a product or service? Good. Elasticity pricing. What pricing strategy aims to convey exclusivity or luxury by setting higher prices? Good. Prestige pricing. What strategy involves setting higher prices to reflect the perceived quality or value of a product or service? Yep. Oh, croc. Question 5. What pricing method involves adjusting prices based on the price elasticity of demand? Elasticity pricing. Oh. Question 6. What pricing strategy sets different prices for different segments based on factors like income or membership status? Take it you put the wrong one. Discrimination pricing, yep. Which approach involves setting prices lower initially to gain market share? Penetration pricing. Oh, that's really throwing a cat amongst the pigeons, isn't it? Tiger baby. What pricing strategy sets high initial prices and gradually lowers them over time? Price skimming. Oh, Montana. Big Hannah Montana. What pricing method adjusts prices based on competitors' pricing strategies? I heard that from up here. Just tell the rest of the room, why don't you? Competition. Okay, so last question. Wait, who's Tiger Baby? Oh, again. Wow. Okay. Stay calm. Stay calm. What strategy involves charging different prices to different customer segments based on their willingness to pay? Did you do it? No. Oh, we got. Oh, wow. Oh. You were lucky that everyone else got it wrong as well. Well done. So it's a shame Charlie's not here because he's now only one a front. He won't be happy. He won't be happy. Right, now, he's where, sorry? He's a waiter? Is he? Make a note of that. More important than sports finance, is it? Okay. So the reason I've whizzed through that is because this is something that students enjoy doing every year. Going to get you to try and apply some of the stuff we've learned over the last hour to a game. Okay, so there's an app on the Apple or App Store, whichever kind of phone you've got, and it's called Football Chairman, and it's based on you have to make decisions about pricing and cost. Okay, so I'm going to set an hour aside for you to have a go at that and try and apply some of the things we've spoken about. So what we'll do is, you can go down, you can do this in a partner if you want to, or you can just do it by yourself. You download the app, it's the free version, you don't pay for it. And if you can get through a season or 2 seasons in the next hour, then that's great. The idea is you've got to try and build this football club from scratch, starting off non-league. You've got to think about costs. Try and maintain a focus on the educational point. So how do you maintain your cost? Thinking about how do you spend money, okay? And you've got to try and keep your bank balance in check, okay? So I'll give you an hour from now. Obviously, if you need to use the toilet or have a break in that hour, but we'll be finishing up at 5:30. So yeah, let me know if you have any issues downloading it. There will be a prize for the best team name, okay? So whoever has the most inventive team name, most creative team name. Yes, love it. Okay, off you go. And then we'll do some quick reflections. Not Ham United. If you're a vegetarian, then it'd be alright, wouldn't it?